name is Joseph Carlson, and this is episode 42 of The Grief of Politics. I'm joined by Avin Carroll. Avin, how you doing?
Doing well, and yourself?
Good. This episode I think is just going to be a recap. I think that's why we started with the BBC article, and we've actually included it here so people can follow along if they want. I changed the overlay a little bit, but yeah, I
I'm
mean,
gonna scroll to the top so people can
oh
see the
yeah, I
title
can
and
do
date.
that. Hang on. It's very okay right there. It's by the BBC.
There we go.
Anyway, you and I talk all the time about politics. We've talked about these trials before. I thought this was a very good article in, just kind of recapping everything. This episode is basically about Trump's legal woes, and because we have a major update on one of them, at least. And I think another one that I read that I couldn't verify, though. We could talk about that. But generally, I mean, we've talked about it before, but I don't think publicly we've talked about it after Trump was found guilty because it happened between episodes. So
Correct.
what is your kind of like perspective now that Trump has been found guilty on 34 counts, 34 felony counts?
So for me personally, like nothing really changes a whole lot. Like this conviction was not a surprise. I guess it kind of was a surprise. I didn't really expect them to hit him with all 34 counts, but kind of the way it was laid out, I'm not surprised it was with all 34 counts.
Right.
I know there are some questions of like the jury instructions and how that works. From what I read, that's kind of the standard jury instructions and understandings for New York, but I haven't done any digging. So there could be a case to be made that like, oh, this is unfair, and the jury instructions were biased, and there's no way Trump was going to win that way. But Trump's been painting this. I'm a victim. They're out to get me. I'll never get a fair trial in New York story since this came out.
Right.
His
That's his
zealots
hometown now.
have followed it and just drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak, hook, line, and sinker. Like they're completely bought in. There's no way he could get a fair jury trial.
Right.
And, if any of them are listening to this, I'm just going to make the simple point. You're not going to listen to me. I don't really care. I don't need to change your opinion. But hopefully if you're listening to this, you're at least, trying to get some perspective. The fact that it was a jury trial, Donald J. Trump's own attorneys that he selected and hired and has given his hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to, selected to the jury with the prosecution. They got to make their case. Right. This is how all criminal justice in our country takes place. And, right, like, the jury decided unanimously to convict. Now, maybe the instructions were kind of fuzzy. We'll go to the appellate court and let them make their decision if there was anything wrong in it. Yeah. Trump's attorneys, like there's all kinds of exploration and digging into their strategies and what they said and what they did. And most legal professionals that I've read have said that Trump's attorneys missed many opportunities to object, to stand up for stuff, and then always seem to do it in hindsight. I read a really good breakdown from a former attorney that basically outlined that one of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's last cases that she wrote the opinion on basically cemented into law that attorneys have to use the legal strategy that their client dictates to them.
Yeah.
And so the speculation was that Trump dictated to his attorneys the strategy he wanted to take. And for me, I think he wanted to lose because this allows him to paint a reckless justice system that's out to get him because he's found that works with his base. And this particular case is a really, really good case to do it because it's a new legal theory. It kind of hinges on sort of a shoestrung, barely connected together idea. There's a reason that the Justice Department did not go on this on their own. Mm-hmm. The federal DOJ did not pursue this on their own. And a lot of people think the former state's attorney in New York didn't do it as well because they just looked at it and thought it was pretty weak. Bragg managed to pull it off. We'll see what ultimately happens, but at the end of the day, right, like I just think this builds up the myth and the idea that Biden and the government are just out to get Trump. It's all
Right.
made up, it's all false, and he's just a big, huge, giant victim,
Right.
and you need to stand up and protect him. Because if you don't make him president, this can happen to anyone. So, no, my opinion doesn't change, and I've had my monologue. What about you, Joe? How do
I
you
cede my time. I yeah.
All right,
I do
everyone,
not
we're
see
done.
my
Have a
time.
good
I do not
day.
see my time.
Avin's opinion is here.
Yeah, it's all done. 4 minutes in, we
Please
solved it.
comment beneath here and let me know where I am wrong with facts and stated arguments, not opinions. Mind you, mine was an opinion, but yeah, so espouse your opinions. That's what we're
Yeah,
here for.
I mean, like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. I guess we're supposed to say that at the beginning. Anyway, whatever. Tell your friends.
I mean, look, if people like it, they're going to like it. If people want to subscribe, they're going to subscribe. So if you forget to do it every now and again, or for that matter, don't do it at all, like at the end of the day, people know where the buttons are. They know what to do.
I know, yeah. It's like, they put the little icon up, and it's like everybody knows that. Anyway, my whole opinion about the thing, I echo what you said a lot. I was surprised. Again, I thought maybe it was going to be a hung jury, or like maybe some of the charges would come back guilty. Some of them he would be, found not guilty on. I don't think I was surprised by the response, obviously, by his party or him.
No.
I also heard that kind of behind the scenes, I listened to some interviews with some lawyers that were actually in the, watching the trial take place. Cause I guess, I don't know if it was open to the public, but some people could sit in. And it was, I heard one attorney actually talk about what Trump's defense should have been. And he said every time the defense had an opportunity to do that, they did not do these things. And he laid out the reason why Trump. Now, again, like you said, the lawyers have to do what Trump is telling them to do. He's the client. They're basically his employee. Also, he could have bad representation. That's part of the legal system. Sometimes you have bad lawyers. Like you said, if they don't object or whatever, that can affect the trial. But he does have the process of an appeal. The one thing I was going to ask, do you think he's going to get jail time? That's kind of on everybody's mind. There's a lot of pundits out there.
I really don't know. I don't think that he will unless he really, really starts poking the bear. And to be fully honest, I think he wants it. I think he wants to go to jail because he wants to foment anger at the Democratic Party. And it's pretty easy to paint Juan Merchan as associated with the Democratic Party, which he is. And his daughter's, political insider somehow. I don't know exactly what she does, but I know that conservative media is bringing that up constantly, that she's out raising money on this trial.
Right.
There's so much benefit to Trump making his point, selling the point that he is a political victim and that our government is out to get conservatives, that I expect him to poke the bear and I expect him to push it. And I think he wants the jail time because he wants people up in arms and angry, and it just makes him substanceless, right? Like his whole campaign, all of it, at least as far as I see it, is I'm a victim, and if you don't support me, you'll be one too.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about it before, but the idea of some people on the right, their thing is like, you shouldn't play the victim card. You should push through adversity. But I guess when it comes to certain things, you should be the victim. Anyway, to catch people up, if nobody knows, I mean, this is by the BBC. It came out, I think, a few days ago. The 4th of June. So, 11 days ago.
Last week and a half.
Yeah. basically a payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels shortly before the 2016 election. That's what this is about. Miss Daniels was paid $130,000 to keep quiet about her claim that she had sex with Trump, which he denies. Providing so-called hush money payment is not illegal, but instead the case was more technical and centered on how Trump's former lawyer, who paid Miss Daniels, had his reimbursement records recorded in Trump's accounts. The former president was found guilty on falsifying his business records by saying the payment was for legal fees. Jurors listened to weeks of testimony and found him guilty under all 34 counts of fraud. Trump said the case was politically motivated. This is a disgrace. This is a rigged trial. I will say that I heard as the verdict was coming out that like a few hours before, maybe the day, because was it over a day? They didn't deliberate that long. But I think before leading to the verdict, they actually, the foreman came out and wanted some of the evidence reread to him, some of the testimony, I think from Michael Cohen. Because from what I understand...
and from the former runner of the, editor of the National Enquirer.
David Peck.
Maybe, yeah.
His name was David Peck.
I wanted to hear some of his stuff, too.
I think, to me, that's great. You're like, hey, go over this again. And I know the defense really wanted to hamper on Michael Cohen of like, hey, he's a convicted liar, which he is. He was found guilty of lying. But like some people have pointed out, even on the right, yeah, he was convicted of lying for Trump. So like if you're a mobster and one of your henchmen is on trial and they go, well, why would we listen to you, sir? You're a murderer. It's like, yeah, but I murdered for that guy over there. So like Cohen is like, yeah, but I lied for that guy over there. Yeah. So I didn't think I didn't think the response was surprising. I knew they were going to say it was rigged. And I think, man, I don't think he will go to prison. Because it is a nonviolent crime. He is a white-collar offender.
Very rarely do people under this conviction actually go to prison.
Right, yeah.
Right?
It's like
the only way I think he'd actually do prison time is if he keeps attacking the judge's daughter and the judge himself.
And he was under a gag order like double-digit times. I want to say at least 10 times he violated the gag order. So the judge is probably going to take all that into account. But of course we have to, and then I've heard the theory that the judge might wait for the appeals process because he might say, well, and they might, if he says like a year probation, then the defense could be like, well, I mean, it's not what we wanted, obviously, but like, it's not as bad as we could have got. So, maybe Trump won't go for an appeal. Maybe he'll be happy with probation and, move on. So, I mean, I don't know.
We'll see. I was also reading that part of the reason that they set I know a lot of conspiracy theory is they chose the date for the sentencing to be super close to the Republican National Convention.
Right, I heard that.
They did that on purpose. But I also was reading yesterday that it was chosen because it would be after the Supreme Court has had their chance to make their decision on immunity, which I thought was this month.
I think it is. I think it's the end of the month or very early in next month. I mean, speaking of other cases, we can get to it here just to go over these. The next one is the Capitol riot in the 2026 election. That's another trial that he's under. If he illegally conspired to overturn his 2020 election defeat to Joe Biden. Federal prosecutors allege he pressured officials to reverse the results, knowingly spread lies about election fraud, and sought to exploit the Capitol riot on January 6th, 2021, to delay the certification of Mr. Biden's victory and stay in power. He's been charged with 4 criminal counts, including conspiracy to defraud the U.S. and conspiracy against the rights of citizens. Some have speculated he would be charged with insurrection or aiding insurrection, but that is not one of the charges. He has denied wrongdoing, claimed the Biden administration is behind the prosecution.
Yep.
It's postponed until, like you said, the Supreme Court can come to a decision whether he is immune from prosecution because he was exercising his presidential duties while he was whatever. Anyway, while he was like getting fake electors. many of these trials that we're going to go over aren't going to happen until after the election.
Most of them probably not. No.
Yeah. He could go to jail with that one. Conspiracy to defraud the U.S. is punishable by 25 years in prison. Obstructing an official proceeding is punishable by
up to 5 years in prison.
Oh, 5 years. I conflated the 20 and the 5. Conspiracy against rights is punishable by a fine of not more than 10 years in prison or both. Both are logistically security and political questions about whether Trump would actually serve jail time if convicted. It would be uncharted territory. A lot of people have talked about that. The Georgia 2020 election. This one with Fani Willis, big problems. She was paying her lover to work with her, payments under the table. I believe I heard, I don't know if they have it in this article. I'll just read this. Trump and some 18 other defendants are accused of criminally conspiring to overturn his very narrow defeat in the state of Georgia in 2020. The racketeering investigation led by Georgia prosecutor Fani Willis was sparked in part by a leaked phone call in which the former president asked the state's top election official to find 11,780 votes. Now, here's the deal with that. I remember hearing the phone call, the perfect phone call, as Trump said. They played it all over the news. The funniest thing about that is he didn't even round up. That would look better if you got, like, say, 12,000 votes or 11,900 votes. But he wanted, that must be one more vote than he needed. No one would ever question an election if it was one vote away or ask for a you know what? Whatever. That's what he did supposedly. But I mean, there's audio of him doing that. Trump was hit with 13 criminal counts, subsequently reduced to 10. They include one alleged violation of Georgia's Racketeering, Influence, and Corruption Act, the RICO Act. The former president has pleaded not guilty. Date has not been set. I heard a small update, which I didn't include, but obviously the defense wants the case thrown out because of Fani Willis's problems and improprieties. But she basically just said, no, the evidence is solid. That didn't affect my prosecution. Just find another prosecutor. And I believe a court is debating that right now, and it may be favorable to her. Like, yeah, there's still good evidence here. You just need to get another prosecutor, basically. Trump could go to jail. The racketeering charge carries a maximum 20-year jail sentence. Georgia prosecutors would need to prove that there was a pattern of corruption from Trump and his co-defendants aimed at overturning the election results in order to bring a conviction. As for making false statements, that carries a penalty of between 1 to 5 years in prison or a fine. And then, yeah, that's bad. Apparently there's reports in that case of him having these fake electors and them knocking on people's doors, like actual vote counters' doors, to influence like how they were counting. And they said after this has happened, they've still been harassed. Because
the vote counters?
Yes, they're still being harassed from Trump supporters that say they're not doing their democratically, they're not doing their job, basically. This one, I think even people on the right are like, this is a classified documents case that is happening in Florida right now. What's it about? Whether Trump mishandled classified documents by taking them from the White House to his Mar-a-Lago residence after he left office. It is also about whether he obstructed the FBI's efforts to retrieve the files, as well as the criminal investigation into his handling of them. The majority of the counts are for willful retention of national defense information, which falls under the Espionage Act. There are then 8 individual counts, which include conspiracy to obstruct, withholding a document or record, and making false statements. Trump has pleaded not guilty to all counts. When's the trial? No one knows. No one knows. It says right here, this was written before. This is a mess. I actually have heard a little bit about Eileen Cannon. I gotta say, it doesn't look good, man. Every once in a while you go, well, that's a weird, whether you're Democrat or Republican, you can be like, well, that's a weird way to interpret that, but people are interpreting the law. But it seems like Eileen Cannon, in every instance, has been trying to give Trump a win. Like the latest one that got knocked down by the appellate court, I heard, was she said, well, if all this is going on, you know who's going to have to read these super secret documents if they're going to be involved? The groundskeeper. You know, the guy that you said was hiding documents? He's going to have high security access to read these documents. And Jack Smith was like, are you out of your freaking mind? No, he moved them. He didn't read them. So they shot that to an appellate court, and it sounds like they were like, I don't even know what you're on right now, Eileen Cannon. Stop doing this. No, the trial's going to go forward, but we don't know when. We don't know when because apparently every time she makes a decision, it takes 2 to 3 weeks.
Well, and she's slow rolling the review periods too, and
Right.
she's giving meetings to every single one of the decisions, as opposed to just making decisions from the bench, which happens all the time. They review a thing and they just make there's a phrase for it. I do not remember what it is, but they make a decision from the bench. There could be a defensive argument for that, right? Giving her the benefit of the doubt, it could be she's looking at the former president. Right. And she wants to make sure that everything is reviewed meticulously. It may not be her trying to slow roll it.
Well, a lot of people pointed out she doesn't.
Helps.
A lot of people pointed out she doesn't have a lot of trial experience. There was only 3 trials that she sat in on. None of them were this high profile or security. Obviously, none of them had to do with the former president.
Right.
I will give her that, but it seems like when the appellate court, when it goes to them, when it's like a 3-0 decision, just batting her down, it's like it's happened. I think twice so far. It's like what's going on? What's going on?
I mean, again, right? Like you could come at her, and honestly, the optics are terrible. So you can easily look at her and be like, no, she's totally protecting her guy. I mean, he put her in office. She's protecting him. This would be a first because most of Trump's judges after the 2020 election, were like, no, there's no evidence of any fraud here. Why are you even wasting my time? Like every single state they tried to bring stuff up got shot down.
Yep.
Republican or Democrat, left or right, like Trump's own judges were like, no, this is nuts. There's nothing here.
Well, there's great audio too of Giuliani and stuff. You know, publicly they're like, this is fraud, and they have audio of the court cases, and Giuliani's like, well, this isn't a fraud case. So it's like, oh, when you have to bring actual evidence, you're like, ugh, I don't know if I could say that. I want to practice law, and so I can't lie. So whoops.
Well, that didn't last for him long term.
They served him at his birthday. Did you hear that? They served him he was at his 80-something birthday. And
they knew where he would be. And
he said before that, he's like, he took a photo apparently earlier in the evening of the birthday and was like, you guys only got a couple hours left. The clock's ticking. Yeah,
so he was,
and he was
even baiting him.
Well, they were at the party and as they were singing happy birthday, apparently they go, and you've been served. I was like, couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah, so with Eileen Cannon, I would say, right, like there is an argument to be made that she's a little bit low on the experience level, a lot, compared to other judges that could have been chosen.
Right.
It's a super high profile case. It's the former president. You know, he's the one that appointed her. And so it could just be like, in her eyes, I am going to dot every single I and cross every single T so that I can defend why I make the decision that I ultimately make in this. The problem is, there's many instances where standard legal convention would have gone the other way from what she's done.
Yeah.
Like the bench decisions that she has made, that still lean in Trump's favor. Now, she has made decisions in Jack Smith's favor, too. I've seen multiple headlines and articles Judge Cannon gave Jack Smith a win in this one, and things along those lines. So we'll see what happens. It's not going to get tried before the election. The Chutkan case, which is the January 6th one, right? Depending on where the Supreme Court lands on immunity, if they do decide that Trump was not immune and that's the decision that they actually come forth with, the Chutkan case might be getting heard right at election time. Now, if that's true, Trump shot himself in the foot by going for immunity because he would have to be in the courtroom in the final stretch before election.
Yeah.
But
It's
he's going to, of course, blame them for timing it, and it's all their fault because they timed it this way. It's election interference, and no one is going to remember that. Oh yeah, if you had just taken the immunity status from the appeals court, that the decision that they'd made, and not gone to the Supreme Court, this would have been decided months ago.
right. Yeah.
But he has to delay. He has to.
Yeah. Could he go to jail for the documents case? These charges could, in theory, lead to substantial prison time if Trump is convicted. Looking at the letter of the law, the court under the Espionage Act carry a maximum sentence of 10 years. Other counts related to conspiracy and withholding or concealing documents each carry maximum sentences of 25 years. Nobody knows about the logistics of Trump going to jail. In fact, in the felony case, if he goes to jail for the one he just got convicted of, the Secret Service has already had to tour the jail, apparently, and look at logistics of having him in jail. And you know what? I just want a photo. I just want a photo of two guys in suits in front of the bars and him. It's not going to happen. But I thought there was one other case, too. But apparently, I'm thinking there was 4. Maybe that's the other 3 they broke down or whatever. I wanted to bring this to everybody's attention because I saw a Democratic senator. I forget his I think his last name is Liu, and I believe he's from Hawaii. He was questioning someone about this whole legal process months ago before these were even in court, and basically went through the litany of people in Trump's orbit that have been found guilty. Well, actually, before we get to that, do you have anything to say about the articles? Have anything to wrap up, or was that a good, concise thing to wrap up? I thought it was a good, concise article that basically just bullet pointed all of his cases, which is why I included it in the document or in the run of show.
I think it definitely summarizes them up, like pretty basically what they're after on it. Yeah. And if anyone listening to this isn't aware of the cases as it stands, I'd be shocked.
It's shocked, I tell you, shocked. Especially if you're watching the show, because if you're watching the show, you're probably a little bit plugged in, reading news a little bit more than most people. You may have a subscription to Apple News Plus, which we do. I like this. Now, again, I was a little confused because it's from Intelligencer, which is New York magazine, maybe, but it's the Intelligencer, but they're quoting a Wall Street Journal article titled, "Why Does the Mob Crook Keep Getting Charged with Crimes?" It came out on June 13th, 2024. It can't be that the longstanding ties of criminals were once lamented. And I just want to skip to, there was a list here.
This weird video of dancing girls.
Yeah, sorry about the ad.
Not what you think to those that are listening. It's not by any means graphic. It's just it happened.
Yeah, they're in a dance class.
Article.
Let's see. I'm trying to see. There was a list of people. Maybe not. Dang it. Anyway, Lou the senator from Hawaii did this massive thing about Paul Manafort was found guilty, which was Trump's right here.
Well, the first example is the first example Hennessy cites for the disparity is that Robert Mueller brought charges against Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, Rick Gates, and Michael Flynn, but that anyone in the FBI who actually did meddle in the 2016 election was, quote, never prosecuted.
Right.
I don't know what the background is on that, though, because that's the only thing that's listed here, but yeah.
They bring up that Robert Mueller is a Republican. That he tried to use like the Durham report and stuff to go after people. Basically, I'll say this. When you lay out the amount of people around Trump that have been found guilty and convicted of crimes, Steve Bannon is another one that has to report to jail because he refused to subpoena. He didn't want to talk about the January 6th trial. And you'll never believe, Avin, do you know that Steve Bannon has a podcast? Did you know that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The War Room. It sounds insane. Every time I listen to it, I'm like, what is... Anyway, every time I listen to like 2-minute clips, I'm like, what is happening? This would make a great fictional podcast. He cited in his defense of not being able to go to jail, or why he needs to serve probation, not go to jail, is he's got podcasting duties. So he's got to work on the podcast. He literally used that as a defense. So Evan, if you were ever facing any jail time, you and I could be like, listen, we got a podcast every month. It takes a long time to talk about and plan. Could we just not go to jail for that time? Because if Steve Bannon has taught me anything, it's that.
Hey, the people that listen to this, they deserve to hear us.
That's right.
And it would be a crime at national scale.
It would be a crime.
A hindrance to the future of our nation if you or I weren't able to do
it. Would be a crime to not allow us to speak these, read these articles. I just got to say, when you read the list of actual people, again, that have been actually prosecuted and that are actually serving jail time, of all these people that Trump hired and had around him, is it the fact that the justice system is rigged, or you just hired a bunch of people that broke the law? And what does that say about you, that all the people around you, yeah.
But it's the deep state out to get him because he's challenging and draining the swamp. Herein lies the problem, right? Like, even, I don't know how I put it. No one that is truly fully in Trump's camp is going to listen to anyone other than Trump. And if Trump shifts his position too far or too dramatically, they would even discount him because they would just assume that he was gotten to or it was a deep fake.
Right.
And that is the problem with this type of leadership, is it breeds zealotry. And that's why I use that word, zealotry. Unwilling to hear any argument in any way, shape, or form that is counter to your own viewpoint. And, hey, if that's you, great. Own it. I'm not going to listen to you because I've made up my mind. I think most Americans, by and large, the vast majority of Americans, want to believe themselves of being open-minded individuals, and probably recognize that we live in a world nowadays. Like, I think they would cite the other side, Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative. I think they would cite that the other side lives in an echo chamber. They don't know what I'm going through or my arguments, and they're not hearing the full story. The problem is that everyone does their own research, like we talked in COVID, and that research happens to be confirming what they have already made a decision on, because no one goes outside of it. Very few people go outside and seek it. Mm-hmm. Last week, you and I talked about this. I'm not a big fan of Vivek Ramaswamy. Listening to him on the campaign trail, I was not a big fan of what he was saying. But he did a podcast interview with one of my more favorite podcasts, and it was eye-opening for me, because I was like, oh wow, like, he has really solid backing and understanding and reasonable history to back his particular viewpoints. I disagree with him, and when it got to his viewpoints on Trump, I think that he definitively picked and chose the things that backed up his own argument.
I think he wants a job in the Trump administration somehow. So
there's that, but I mean, honestly, he has his own particular worldview, and he has his audience that he has to keep happy, right? Like, he's not going to call it out. Right. So I personally think that, on that vein, he was just not looking at, is there merit in the other side? Which was kind of funny, because he was talking about we should live in a world that is a meritocracy. Still, I learned a lot, and I don't think I'm particularly aggressive against most people. My opinion on Vivek was not one that was particularly aggressive. I just didn't agree with him. But it was eye-opening, and I definitely feel less, or maybe more open to hearing him talk, and more open to hearing his viewpoints and his arguments, because he did have some ideas that I think deserve exploration.
Did he talk about...
Wish more people would do that.
Did he talk about moving the voting age? I've heard him talk about moving the voting age to 25.
Not in this particular instance.
I don't... Again, this was stuff during the campaign trail. I mean, he obviously is out.
Yeah.
He may have had time to be like, that was dumb.
They talked about him buying BuzzFeed and kind of what his intentions are there. They talked about sort of this idea of the meritocracy. They talked a lot about
Yep.
The failings of DEI in business, uh, that kind of stuff was sort of where they went. He brought up a lot of I think Truman era period of government policy and
Oh,
how they
oh,
failed,
okay,
and
okay.
yeah. And I don't necessarily disagree with some of the stuff that he brought up there. I don't know if his messaging was exactly accurate, but I can understand where he came to his viewpoints on those things, and I appreciated that. Unfortunately, the way we do campaigning, right, like that doesn't do any good. We as human beings, we respond to negative. We say we don't want it, but we respond to negative, and so
Right.
that's what politicians use because it's effective. We don't respond very well to positive unless the person is charismatic enough to get everyone pulled into a movement in a positive direction.
Right.
And that's why um Obama was able to get everyone around. Yes, we can. He's very charismatic, well spoken. He was really able to sell that vision and get enough people around it that he was able to win the presidency on a more, not entirely, but on a more positive campaign.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah,
no matter what I'll say about Trump, I mean, he's got charisma. You know, you see him come on
yeah,
stage, he waves, you're like, heck yeah, man. Obama had it. You know, again,
yeah.
politics
Well, I
aside.
mean, most leaders at that level do, right? Or gone are the days where a politician can run for office on newspaper articles, pictures, and audio, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I gotta
you
say,
got to get out.
I gotta say, Trump has such an orbit around people though, like DeSantis. Like you're just like, man, what absolute like no like no riz, as the kids say whatsoever. Just going out there, just blathering on about. Vivek did have some charisma, but it always seems like he was yelling at someone during the debates, and you're like, all right, well, this is not, you and Nikki Haley just yelling at each other. I don't think I want to see that in the debates. Yeah, anyway. So the last thing I wanted to bring up is, President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was convicted of all three felonies and a federal gun charge. Now, he lied on a federal form, and apparently on the form it says, if you lie on this form, you could get 25 years in jail. That's what he's looking at. He was... I'm going to close this ad so something bad doesn't happen to the channel. He apparently was using drugs and then not using drugs and then relapsed and then got a gun, signed a form and got a gun. The gun was not used in a crime or anything like that. He didn't hurt anybody, but he did lie on a federal form. But he was found guilty. His team said that they're basically going to, this was by the AP. It came out June 11th, so a few days ago. It was only 3 hours. The deliberation only lasted 3 hours over 2 days in Delaware, which is his home state with his dad. Biden said he will not pardon Hunter. We'll see. If he's on his way out and Trump goes back in office, who knows? And he said he respects, what the courts did. He's not going to have the DOJ go after the courts. Obviously, Hunter Biden's team said they're gonna go for an appeal and they're gonna use every legal thing they can. And I guess I read somewhere that a juror stepped forward and said, that in my opinion, the defense screwed up again. They didn't do the thing that you said early on with Trump, where they didn't object, they didn't do this, they didn't, To be fair to Trump and Hunter, to be fair to Trump, yes, what he did may not have been illegal, but it's the hiding it that's illegal, right? Like, oh no, like I didn't, whatever. Hunter, if you're using drugs, maybe you're not for a week and you think this is my last week of using drugs. And if that's the week you decide to get the gun and you say, I'm not using drugs now, but then you relapse, but then there was text that came out that says he possibly was using during that time, but he could have had a good day where he's like, man, I hit rock bottom. I'm going to get help. And then the next day you relapse. You get the gun. Who knows? I'll say this. Just like Trump, he might not get jail time. I think this is, I don't know if he has, it was a nonviolent crime and it was a form. He filled out a form, but it was a federal form, so it's a felony, right? But I think like Trump, they're going to be like, well, apparently now he's on the straight and narrow. I'm sure they'll talk to his therapist, sponsor, whatever, and they'll be like, hey, he's been in a program, therapy, whatever, for X amount of time. He's been clean this many days. He did the UA. He's clean. We took a hair sample, which they can do. Everything's clean, and the judge may be like, hey, you're on the straight and narrow now. Probation for 2 years or whatever, And he could do that with Trump, too. The judge could say, listen, you're the former president. There's got to be something. You're going to pay a fine, and you're going to have a year of probation and to travel out of state,
Right.
which is insane to say for someone running for office. You're going to have to clear it with people. You're going to have to, there's going to be a plan. You're going to have the Secret Service. You're going to have to you're going to have your PO notify us what state you're in. They may have to follow you on the campaign trail. I don't know.
We'll find out.
Yeah, that's what I'll say about both of them. Like, it was a non-violent thing. They both messed up. And, hopefully Hunter is clean. I heard an interview with him about a year ago, and the interview asked him, said, are you clean now? And he said, I'm clean now. And he said, well, good luck. And if you need to talk, I know some people. So, it's rough.
The thing about the Hunter Biden thing, and I feel like this is probably why you brought it in, right, is it does highlight that there's other high-profile political cases going on.
Yeah.
And yet I don't hear many, if any, major Democrats crying, this is a political witch hunt. They're out to get him. This is all just a scam. These are Trump cronies trying to punish the president. Right? Like, the thing about everyone crying about how all of the cases against Trump are just a political opponent trying to crush another political opponent. I just have two feelings about it. One, if it's political and you did commit a crime, then you committed a crime. Like, I don't care if it's political. You got caught. And if you want to get into politics, since the dawn of time, this is not new. Political opponents have gone after each other, breaking controversies, finding mistresses, finding crimes, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we always do this. Mm-hmm. This is not new. We are not setting a new precedent here. Yeah. This is all politics. There are multiple cases going on in our country right now of senators and congressmen who've done bad things, and I would put a lot of money on the fact that there's someone on the opposing side who helped bring that to light. And so in this case, right, like, what happened to Hunter's probably political too, because it wouldn't have happened if
his last name wasn't Biden.
Giuliani hadn't brought up the laptop, and his last name wasn't Biden.
Well, also, I just want to point out, have you heard of Bob Menendez? He's that New Jersey senator that, like, is in a corruption thing right now. He was taking gold bars. He's a Democrat. He was taking gold bars. And I'm like, that is a level of corruption of, like, don't wire me the money. Don't put it in a safe location that I can take later. Give me a gold bar. That is an insane amount of corruption. So, like, he's on trial right now for corruption. I think there was another one that got brought up. And I'll just say, like, hey, man, the right keeps saying, well, what if we wanted to go after Hillary? And it's like, that's not the get you think it is. Go ahead. If she did something wrong, arrest her. I don't on the right when
the president should not be immune, right? Like, we live in a country that is governed by the rule of law. Yeah. Like, the whole idea. And Trump, I believe, said this on his own campaign trail, right? Like, the president shouldn't be above the law.
Yeah.
And has now flipped his point. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I haven't found that audio anywhere. I would be not surprised in any way, shape, or form if he said that.
He did say lock her up, too. He said that a couple times, but that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely accused her of crimes that she needs to be punished and blah, 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 right? So, just anyone who's following him in this and making that argument, I would just beg you to look at all of our politics as a whole and the history of our country and how much of it is politically motivated when this kind of thing happens. Like, this is not new. We aren't setting a new dangerous precedent. We've just raised the existing precedent to a higher level. And usually, presidents have made it as far as they are because they've managed to either be really good at hiding it or because they've learned to play the game in such a way that they have allies that don't flip on them.
Yeah, that's
Donald J. Trump's allies do not protect him
well. I
because
mean,
he will throw anyone under the bridge to
yeah.
save his
I
life, under
mean,
the bus.
years ago, I mean, in New York, apparently there's reports of like when he was doing uh, real estate and like property management and getting stuff, using contractors to do work. Back in like the 80s, they're like, that guy doesn't pay. He doesn't pay. Lawyers, I remember when this all started, when he was leaving office and all this was like on the horizon, there was reports coming out that law firms were like, no, because one, he doesn't listen to us when we give him advice, and he doesn't pay us. So we're not going to go stick our neck out in the line because we want to keep practicing law. Again with one of the felony, the 34 felony charges of falsifying business records. Apparently, there was another woman lawyer on the team that stopped signing the legal documents they needed because apparently there's talk that she even found it like this is kind of not good and it could get me in trouble. Like I'm not saying that this is illegal, but this is a gray area and I still want to keep my law license. I would recommend there's a YouTuber named Legia Miller. I usually don't recommend YouTubers, but she was a former lawyer. She breaks down this whole thing of she did a video on some environmental thing and she's like, I actually can't talk about this because my company was involved with the litigation of this. But anyway, with the Trump one, she breaks down like how, what this could mean for like the legal system. Like you said, it is political, but if there's something there, something's there. So check out her whole channel.
If you broke the law, you broke the law. If you get caught breaking the law, you should be prosecuted, convicted, and punished. Right? The idea of lawfare that they're bringing up now, I'm like, man, that's a great catchphrase. And I mean, leave it to Donald J. Trump, man. Like, the guy's good at marketing and branding.
Did he come up with it or did someone else?
Around him
I heard it. And I don't know if he came up with it, but I mean, hey, latch onto it if you got to use it,
He's going to latch onto it, right? And it sells a great message. It resonates very well. Lawfare, lawfare, lawfare. You're hearing it all over the place in conservative media now.
Well, now all the Democrats have to do is just say, convicted felon Donald Trump. Just keep saying that every time they bring him up on the news or in a campaign trail. Everybody that's a Democrat that's running for office could be like, well, the 34 times convicted felon Donald Trump, that's also... Yeah, I heard of people on the right
going... But that doesn't move the needle enough, right? Like, we've really got to move the other audience. This is why I wanted the documents case to come out and actually get tried.
Because, the classified, the one in Florida?
Yes. Yeah. Because the evidence in that case, if you haven't been following any media outside of conservative media, the evidence... conservative media doesn't talk about it. They don't. They don't go through the evidence. Or they dismiss the little bits and pieces that they do talk about so people feel like they're hearing it.
No, I don't want to
evidence in that case is damning.
I don't want to curse on the podcast, but there was a Democratic senator asking questions, holding up the photos of the documents case, and she goes, well, it looks like these are in the bathroom. But she didn't say bathroom. She used the S word. She goes, are these documents by the S word? And I was like, respect. She was like just holding it up because they're like, well, we don't really know. And she just held up the photo and goes, this is what they found when they got on the property. This looks like a bathroom.
The audio recordings, like just the video evidence, like the amount of evidence that like he knew what he was doing was wrong. You don't do what he did, what he had his staff do, without knowing what you're doing is wrong.
Well, the thing is, like, too, when you're...
but it wasn't wrong. I made it unclassified. And then there's literally, like, that's his whole talking point. I have conservative friends that have repeated it back to me multiple times, even after the audio tape of him telling someone else.
I should have.
I could have declassified these before I left office, but I didn't. I shouldn't be showing this to you.
Yeah.
Like, admitting that he's showing them something that he knows is classified, he shouldn't be sharing, and that he knows he did not unclassify it, he's not supposed to have it. Like, the evidence in that case is damning to that man. And if his followers hear it, I really think they'll find a way of doing the gymnastics to defend him. But a lot of people that are like, no, they're out to get him, this is a witch hunt, that are more conservative leaning but still independent, a lot of people, I think that when they hear that are going to be like, ooh, maybe they've got a point. Like, maybe this guy shouldn't have access to this kind of information. Maybe this guy shouldn't be in charge of decisions around these kind of things. Maybe Joe Biden is actually better. But dear Lord, please,
Marginally.
if you hear me
Marginally.
now,
Marginally.
please have Joe Biden step away.
Yeah, it's
Kamala Harris can retire someplace in the mountains in Colorado and never be seen or heard from again.
isn't it? Yeah, her home state's
And
Cali. She could go up to the Shasta Mountains or whatever. And
there you go. Yeah, there you go. But like, neither of these guys should be running. I don't know a single American's excited. Okay, that's not true. I know a few Americans that are excited about Donald J. Trump. There's a pretty good percentage of them that really are. But the vast majority, I think it's something like 70% of polled Americans don't want either of these men on the ticket.
yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, I guess there's an old joke that it's uncouth to talk about who you're going to vote for. But right now, I'm not going to vote for Biden. I'm not, because I'm a liberal hippie, but I can't. Just everything.
Jill Stein it is.
Yeah, I heard.
Actually, I don't know if she's running. Is
She
Jill
is
running?
Yeah,
again?
she went to the pro-Palestinian protests and got assaulted by the police. It's all on video. So she gave an interview. It was like, just watch the video. Like, am I assaulting the officer or is he assaulting me? And you're like, I don't know. It looks kind of like he threw you to the ground. Like, I don't really.
I mean, it's not the first time Jill Stein has done something where
No.
she's been attacked by officers.
No,
By the way, it's not assault when you actually have legal authority to do it. So allegedly assaulted by officers.
Well, I think she got pushed. Well, she got pushed out of the way, and then her producer got like thrown to the ground. But they were non-violent, so that could be a court case of like, hey, we were practicing.
I mean, if she doesn't bring it would be negligent on her behalf.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I was practicing. My thing is like, I am not excited about either of these people, and I think the Democrats have done a bad job. That's the thing is, I got to say that.
Go Chase Oliver.
Oh yeah, the libertarian. Did you see that Trump got booed? He went to the Libertarian Convention.
I did.
Yeah,
why he would do that to begin with? Like, cool, I'm going to walk into enemy territory and try to convince them to vote for me.
That's like going to the Democratic National Convention, going, "Why are you booing me? Why are you booing me? Like, get out of here!"
I mean, not quite. Trump does share some ideology with libertarians. Republicans in general share some similar areas of ideology, and libertarians share some similar ideology with Democrats and Green Party members, right? Because the way the Libertarian Party is kind of structured. And Chase Oliver is not. I'm not going to say he's a classical libertarian, like literally, but like the way we think of American libertarians, we think of someone who's socially liberal,
right,
fiscally conservative,
right,
and that is very much Chase Oliver and who he is. He's like very pro-gun, open up immigration, but like cut government spending, get rid of the Department of Education.
Is he also the first gay?
I don't know if he's the first gay candidate,
but he was
if
nominated.
He were to win, he would be the first gay
president.
If he were to win, he'd be the first gay president. I would be surprised. I would not be surprised if he were the first libertarian gay candidate.
Yeah.
But either way, I don't think it matters, right?
Right.
I think some people will think it matters, and to them, like, that's your belief structure. But at the end of the day, right, like, merits your character, and some people are going to say that's a measure of a man's character.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Because I heard Dave Smith. He's a comedian. He's got a podcast. He's very well spoken, and he also is a libertarian. He gave an interview about because he was there at the convention, obviously, because he's a libertarian, and he was like, oh, it was crazy. And then he talked about, Chance was not, there's obviously, just like every party, there's fractures within the Libertarian Party of more hardline Chase. There's more, there's more philosophies. They're not a monolith, right? And he goes, well, he's not my libertarian candidate. And so even in the but he's like, yeah, I'll tell you why we booed Trump. Like, he's more Republican than he is libertarian. And the things that we want to see changed, he does not want to see changed. So it's like, what are you doing here?
Well, and he's kind of the opposite of a libertarian anyway. Like, he's more authoritarian. He wants more bigger government.
Right.
He wants to shrink the government where the government's against his benefit, and he wants to grow the government where the government is for his benefit. Right? He grew the national debt by, I think, more than any other president in history until probably now Joe Biden. Joe Biden did that by following forward with some of Trump's actual policies as they were anyway.
Probably have to wait till
about Trump that would go well with most libertarians.
Yeah, we'd have to wait till Biden's out of office, but I think Trump still had a bigger deficit. But we'll see at the end of the. Obviously, Biden's not.
But in Trump's defense, the last year of term in office was the beginning of COVID, and like we printed money like crazy, sent out stimmy checks, like it was.
Got them stimmies. Yeah.
He had to do it, right? And then I just, Biden is a liberal Democrat who just spends money to spend money. That's not really true, right? Like you could say he's buying votes, but I feel like Trump was trying to buy votes too.
He's trying to do it now. I mean, at least with everybody does it.
You had to do it, right? Too many Americans were out of work. Too many Americans didn't have money. You absolutely had to do it. Neither of them.
What a great way to end the episode
for the long-term health.
Us of the just country. Shaking our heads the whole like, oh man, I don't. You guys have a good. We'll see you next month. Before we leave, Avin, is there anything you want to plug? Before I think that sums up your thoughts. You just shaking your head at the end. I just looked over the.
Anyone, just not anyone, right? Like, there were jokes in the 2020 election of like, any competent adult or reasonable adult or something like that, and I think I kind of feel the same way again. Like, why on earth are we putting these same people back on the ballot?
Well, don't
get it.
There has been polls to show that you can take a generic Democrat, run it against Trump, and they do better, and a generic Democrat against, or vice versa. If you take a generic Republican and run it against Biden, the generic Republican does better than Trump. If you have a generic Democrat and run it against Trump, the Democrat does better than Biden. It's like you could, like, even, you and I watch Breaking Points. Even Dean Phillips was very honest when he was running on the Democratic ticket. He said, "Hey, I get I'm not flashy, but I think if I got a chance, then I could do well." And it's the way the primaries work and all that. Anyway, is there anything you want to plug before we leave, Avin?
Yes. So same thing I bring up every time. Your Agent Guide. On YouTube, I've got some. The videos are older at this point, 1.5 2 years old. Information is still, a lot of it's still very, very useful. I am a realtor here in Washington State, and my primary objective with my real estate business is not to be your agent, but to help you find agents I know and trust, agents in your area that are skilled and professional. Obviously, if you want me to represent you, I would, but that is not my intention. I'm not out to do that. I have a good full-time job that I absolutely love. So I'm picky about who I pick up as clients.
I will. Yeah. Again, actually, we don't really talk about what we're going to do, but seriously, I've been debating whether we should do another real estate episode maybe next month. There's a lot of stuff with commercial real estate and just the housing market in general.
It's just crazy. Yeah.
So like maybe we'll do, because we haven't done that. I'd have to check the numbers, but we haven't done that in a long time. And I if I remember right, that was the one where you sent me notes because you were very sick. And I read articles. It was like a 30-minute episode where I said, well, the person that knows the most about real estate is bedridden right now. So, but we did it again and some numbers weren't out, or we were just looking at private housing. I think we should look at like commercial real estate maybe next month, because
commercial real estate's a completely different game than private residential.
And it's, it's a backbone to the economy. Banks are propping up these buildings. I mean, we'll probably have, and it's going to affect, if people can get housing, or, are we going to, the grief of politics, will we be able to convert these high rises to apartments? It's very difficult with permitting, and just to do it logistically, is it worth it? If you get a building for a fire sale for a quarter of the price, can you, whatever. Maybe we'll talk about that next month, because there's a lot of moving and shaking on that, and I keep hearing more and more about it. So there was an FBI raid I told you about this morning that kind of blew my mind. Yeah. I just can't believe the FBI. I know this isn't what happened, but I just imagine a bunch of heavily armed FBI agents busting down a door and pointing a shotgun at a server. I don't know why. It had to do with AI, and I know that
too much Family Guy. Joe, I know that's why.
I was like, what are they? They're like, you unplug yourself. You unplug your. Like they're yelling at it anyway.
Yeah, that's not how FBI raids work in this scenario.
That's what I.
Sorry,
think.
Joe.
Anyway,
they show up, FBI, they come in, and they storm the space.
they tell everybody to
start
stop
gathering the
They
documents.
tell everybody in the office to stop touching their keyboards for obvious logistical
Yeah.
reasons. Like many white people, I have several podcasts I'm running. This podcast comes out once a month. You can join us every month when we talk about politics. I have the Gaming with Grief, comes out every week. Occasionally Avin's on that. Hopefully we'll get him on for a good reason. Maybe not the ones where it has to do with layoffs and stuff that we've been doing lately. And then I have a tabletop thing, which we also should get out on that too. Maybe do a one shot or something. So that's what I do. That comes out every week as well. I'm doing extra episodes because we have so many banked. I want to get caught up. So those will be coming out probably like 2 or 3 a week until we get caught up to where we're at now. Thanks everybody for joining us. Remember to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to it, just also subscribe to it. Maybe you happened upon it in your feed. Hopefully it was recommended and that the algorithm is working in some way, shape, or form. And, that's it this month. And we'll talk to everybody next month.